Hello, welcome to my presentation today. I will be talking about business ethics, stakeholders, conflicts, and also the regulatory framework for CSRO, also known as corporate social responsibility. I hope that at the end, you'll find this presentation worthy. Thank you. What is ethics? Ethics is a set of standards, a code, or a value system worked out from human reason and experience by which human choices are determined as right or wrong, good or evil, by Capello, 2024. Ethics, in the real sense, depends on one's moral code. What is lawful may not be ethical, and vice versa. However, business ethics can be challenged by two key factors: the individual management, like the CEO of the firm, and the culture of the organization. These two key factors can influence business ethics. Business ethics relates to the appropriate business policies and practices concerning corporate governance, inside trading, bribery, discrimination, corporate social responsibility, and fiduciary responsibilities. It applies to all aspects of business conduct relevant to the individuals and organizations' conduct. There are several approaches or theories related to business ethics that philosophers have developed. Philosophers like John Stuart Mill, Jeremy Bentham, utilitarianism, and Immanuel Kant, the moral principles philosopher, John Rawls, philosopher of justice and equity, and Aristotle, the philosopher of integrity and character. Going through these theories, one can say that ethics forms the cornerstone for responsible decision making in business and provides the compass to navigate challenges while addressing the needs of stakeholders. Approaches to Business Ethics by same author Pierfilippo Capello, 2024. The first one is amoral business. Amoral business is a modern concept of management that avoids instituting ethical decision making within an organization. This can lead to moral fallout and unethical decision making, including fraud or misconduct. The business seeks to win all at all costs, and absolutely everything is acceptable, including breaking the law. Legislative business focus on complying with the letter of the law rather than its spirit. Just follow the law and nothing more than that. These organizations have corporate values, a mission, and a vision statement. However, they often do the bare minimum needed to comply with the law. In this approach, managers are concerned with the legal rather than the moral ramifications of their decisions. The third approach is responsive business. Responsive business, being ethical, may have a payoff. They feel social pressure to act in the best interests of the public and the environment, and they respond to this. In this approach, the organization shows some concern for its social duties and responsibilities. Management sometimes makes decisions with broader social interests at heart. There are codes of conduct as well as code of ethics. The fourth one is ethical business. Ethical practice is a company's core. The organization, though, still cares about profit and maintains high ethical standards. With this approach, corporate culture has pervaded ethical values and behavior. The employees and leaders are respected by the organization for walking away from actions that violate its culture and values. Area of coverage include corporate social responsibility, customers and supply chain, environmental policy, actions and rules for corporate and personal integrity. Challenging areas of business organizations ethics could be in advertisements, pricing, and suppliers, contracts, etc., etc. Ethical theories. The theories provide frameworks that are structured to evaluate what is right or wrong and guide businesses to align their actions with values such as accountability, fairness, and sustainability. Businesses that apply these theories can foster trust, increase a company's reputation, and make a positive contribution to the environment while achieving long-term success. Utilitarianism. This theory is also known as the consequentialism approach, developed by two philosophers, John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham in 1861. The theory focuses on outcomes and advocates for actions that maximize human happiness or minimize harm for the greatest number of people. While this approach is widely applied in CSRO, risk management, and policy development, it is very effective in decisions that focus on maximizing society's benefits, such as environmental initiatives or large-scale policy changes. Still, it has its challenges because it falls short when the individual right is at stake. Deontology. This theory focuses attention on compliance with moral principles and duties irrespective of the consequences. It was this philosophy that Immanuel Kant developed that formed the basis for this theory, prioritizing the fundamental values such as respect, honesty, and fairness. This means that businesses that apply this theory will often create a code of conduct that forbids unethical practices such as bribery and corruption, discrimination, and false advertising, even when such practices can produce profit. While this theory provides a principled framework that ensures trust and consistency, it is challenging to navigate a highly competitive business environment because of its rigidity. Virtue theory. The virtue ethics. This focuses on the individual and the organization's moral character and virtues instead of rules and consequences. This virtue ethics can be reflected in fostering cultural integration and ethical leadership. Often businesses organize training programs and investments among employees and leaders to cultivate virtue that encourages transparency, communication, and empathetic decision making. For example, a humble and accountable leader can inspire trust and loyalty among employees and customers, respectively. These traits, such as humility, empathy, honesty, serve as a foundation for ethical behavior. Justice-based theories by John Rawls. This philosopher emphasizes equity and fairness in the distribution of resources, opportunities, and responsibilities. Businesses that apply this principle aim to eliminate biases and create systems that promote inclusion and equal treatment. For instance, companies committed to justice ethics implement transparent hiring processes, equitable pay structures, and initiatives that address systemic inequality. These practices demonstrate commitment to fairness, fostering trust among employees and broader community. However, applying this theory in diverse and multicultural contexts can be complex as perception of fairness may differ across regions and cultures. Examples of ethical issues that could affect business operations: employee working conditions, violating workers' basic rights, e.g., lunch break, etc., non-compliance with health, safety, and environmental standards, non-compliance with corporate governance laws introduced by the Sarbanes-Oxley Act 2002 and the UK Corporate Governance Code, which introduced a set of best practices for corporate governance initiatives. Use of forced or child labor, as we see in some continents, harassment and discrimination in workplaces. Examples of absolute and relative ethics. The theory of absolute ethics maintains that only one ultimate moral code applies to all men of all ages, and that shifting circumstances or opinions have no bearing on this code. In relative ethics, the moral code changes depending on the situation due to the wide range of cultural and religious differences. Some actions may be morally right in some instances, but wrong in others. For example, having 4 wives is okay for Muslims, but it will be considered morally wrong for a Christian guy. Mind map of stakeholders. Generally, stakeholders include the employees, the customers, the suppliers, the community at large, directors and managers who manages the organization, the government, and shareholders themselves who actually are the owners of the organization or the business. Implications for each stakeholder when operating ethnically and potential conflicts. A stakeholder is an individual or group interested in what the organization does or who affects or can be affected by the organization. The first on the mind map was the customer. Now, trust and loyalty. Ethical practices refer to being truthful in business operations, including price issues and avoiding fake advertising. Product safety. Product standards enhance consumer satisfaction by offering quality products while minimizing the company's legal liabilities. Social responsibility. Consumers have continually shown a preference for those companies that are eventually conscious and socially responsible. Potential conflict. Ethical behavior results in high costs due to some actions companies can take to go green. This might not be good for customers who want low prices. Customers might prefer a convenient source instead of an ethical one, which creates a conflict between ethics and customer satisfaction, where the latter mean buying from manufacturers who take a shorter time to deliver their goods or from those who offer cheap products. Employees. Just satisfaction for employee and retention of employee. Compassionate ways of handling employees, paying them decent wages, and ensuring they work in a safe environment and encourage morale, thus reducing employee turnover. Professional growth. Ethical companies encourage employees to create a pleasant work environment, work-life balance. Ethical employers pay attention to work-life balance and well-being, which leads to higher employee health and productivity. Potential conflict. Ethical practice, for instance, paying people fair wages and benefits may hamper the culture of putting costs at a minimum, thus being at odds with the manager's profit-making goal. Ethical decisions from which fairness and transparency of the performance could be derived may conflict with employees who seem to underperform. So, shareholders and investors. Implications of ethical behavior of companies. Long-term profitability. Long-term profitability, reporting honesty in using natural resources and sources of funding means that companies achieve high returns in the long run, and there is no risk of suffering from litigation claims and negative reputation. Positive brand image. Firms that are ethical or seen as ethical may appeal to socially responsible customers and investors, increasing the company's brand equity and positioning. Potential conflicts. The object of ethics may have higher initial costs, e.g., better technology, improved labor standards, use of environmentally friendly products that will be unattractive to short-sighted shareholders. Shareholders concerned only with an organization's financial performance may resist ethical but unprofitable decisions in the short run for benefiting society or the environment. Suppliers. What are the implications of ethical behavior to this regard? Long-term relationship, for instance, suppliers should be treated respectfully. Contracts should be fair, especially for raw material suppliers, and all outstanding payment should be settled promptly. Then a stronger long-term relationship will be developed. Fair practices. Suppliers are also made to conform to high level of sustainability, payment of competitive wages, and respect for employees' rights through standards similar to those embraced by ethical companies, hence enhancing supplier practices. Potential conflict. Ethical sourcing may involve setting additional criteria, e.g., environmental or labor, which may costly and generate pressure on suppliers that are not interested in implementing them yet. Suppliers can struggle to meet the ethical expectation of the business if it means incurring more costs, which would lead to a conflict with the businesses placing a high premium on cheap products and services. Local communities. What are the implications of ethnical behavior for businesses? Social good. Ethical companies engage the community by investing in development, employment, and social welfare. Environmental impact. Ethical businesses do not harm the environment through wrongs like pollution or wastage, but support goodwill. Potential conflict. Sustainability initiatives are additional costs. For instance, environmentally friendly practices may be costly or may alter contracts with local workers, such as employing dismissal in case a company moves from one production technique that is unsustainable but economical to another that is sustainable but may require a layoff. There may be conflict between ethical objectives, such as environmental conservation and community needs for employment or economic development through the enlargement of industrial activities. Government and regulators. The implications of behaving ethnically. Compliance and legal safety. Operating ethically saves the company from legal complications, fines, and penalties in executing the business. Policy alignment. Ethical behavior is associated with the government's agenda. For instance, business relations with policymakers are enhanced through environmentalism or fair employee relations. Potential conflicts, such as ethical programs as tough environmental standards, may be in contrast with the political regimes that aim at economic development and employment. It is also important to note that regulatory bodies and authorities may recommend higher compliance that offers high costs for companies to implement. Hence, the conflict between cost and compliance. Competitors. Market differentiation. Sethi and Katawaya, 1979, suggest that practicing operating ethically is a way to stand out from the competition and create a solid positive brand image. Industry standards. Ethical activities promote positive change throughout an industry, resulting in more environmentally friendly business practices. Potential conflicts. The key threats to ethical behavior are competitors adopting unethical methods and pressure ethical organizations and force them to compete with the same standards by lowering their prices. Free riders may file legal cases that jeopardize the ethical practices established in the marketplace by revealing that some firms within the market are involved in exploitative acts on consumers. Now, I will talk on the regulatory framework for CSR. Corporate social responsibility is a business model in which companies, while pursuing their goals, such as revenue growth and maximizing shareholders' wealth, seek ways to create social and environmental benefits. Kelsey Miller, 2020, Harvard Business School says. And according to Pierre-Philippe Capello, 2024, Swiss School of Business and Management, Geneva, CSR is a self-regulatory business model that helps an organization be socially accountable to itself, its stakeholders, and the public. CSR and ethics are heavily linked. However, there is a distinction. CSR is not just a concern for the shareholders alone, but all stakeholders, while ethics is about morally correct behavior. CSR regulatory framework. Organizations around the world are compelled to comply with the elements of CSR by the legislation and regulation within their jurisdiction. The frameworks in CSR are often used as practical tools for businesses to operationalize their CSR strategies and measure their performances. The framework is a structure that provides guidance, tools, and processes for implementing CSR initiatives and the principles and best practices that businesses can follow. However, it is not possible to cover all legal and regulatory frameworks in the nation and federal states around the world. Still beyond that, it is if businesses wish to demonstrate their compliance to higher standards, there are a number of standardization and bodies whose services they can employ to give them some form of accreditation or whose standards they can follow voluntarily. Regulatory framework for CSR continued. The key common elements of CSR embedded in the decision include these things like employment protection, equal opportunities and discrimination legislation, maternal, paternal, and career rights, consumer protection and product liabilities, environmental protection, health and safety legislation, including social causes like empowerment. The regulatory framework for CSR will continue. In addition, the accounting industry and corporate oversight bodies in different countries are building CSR into their frameworks. This means you find elements of CSR in the corporate governance standards and the mandatory reporting requirements for regulators and shareholders. Many companies set very high objective standards to demonstrate their CSR credentials to their customers, communities, investors, etc. Five new standards and accreditation currently in use are the Sustainability Accounting Standard Board, SASB, which is now part of the IFRS Foundation, is an established environmental and social governance framework that sets standards for reporting on the financial impact of a company's sustainability efforts to investors and other stakeholders. The B Labs B Corps certification is a non-profit network that aims to transform the global economy to benefit people, communities, and the planet. B Lab verifies certified B Corps through a rigorous process that points to social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. Companies are allowed to protect their mission within the B Corp legal framework and also ensure stakeholder governance practices are continued even after capital raises and leadership changes occur. The regulatory framework for CSR continued. ISA Code compliance. This ISA Code of Good Practice provides a globally recognized framework and defines practices for an effective and credible sustainability system. It helps companies meet their sustainability commitments and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. An independent verification will determine whether a business meets the ISA Code of Good Practices. The fourth one is International Organization for Standardization, ISO 26000. Creates a set of voluntary standards to help companies implement CSR, which is ISO 26000. It provides guidelines rather than requirements, and if the standards cannot be certified, it does represent an international consensus because of the many stakeholders from around the world who have contributed to its development. Instead, ISO 26000 clarifies what CSR is and shows organizations how to translate CSR principles into practicable actions. The fifth one, Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. This provides a framework for sustainability reporting and it is widely used. A comprehensive set of guidelines is set out for reporting on economic, environmental, and social performance through GRI. It also helps businesses manage, measure, and report their impacts on sustainability development. The regulatory framework for CSRO continued. There are other frameworks such as the consumerism framework, the stakeholder framework, the UN Global Compact, UNGC, the shared value framework, etc., etc. Businesses are offered guidance on implementing and measuring their CSR efforts, encouraging the sustainability and creating positive social and environmental impacts. CSR arguments, defenders. Those who defend the CSR practices are called the defenders here. Many defenders of CSR have argued that companies' social responsibility practices have several positive impacts, including bettering communities, employees' recruitment and retention, enhancing brands, and reducing the risk associated with environmental regulatory practices through reducing harms caused by the company's operational activities. These defenders of CSR also recognize the performance of the triple bottom line, which includes the environmental benefits for the larger society and not just the financial returns for the owners. Many organizations have also pointed to the non-financial benefits and rewards of their CSR efforts. The above argument reveal that the role of business is not only for economic responsibility, but also for ethical, legal, and philanthropical responsibility, as stated in Carroll 1991 CSR Pyramid. Critics' arguments about CSR, the ineffectiveness of CSR. Critics argue that CSR often fails to tackle significant societal challenges, leading to superficial engagement rather than meaningful change. Blowfield and Murray 2019. Some view CSR as a distraction from the core business responsibility, suggesting it can be anti-business or overly pro-business, depending on the perspective. Blowfield and Murray 2019. Misleading practices. Some view CSR as an analog, suggesting that organizations may use CSR initiatives to mislead the public about their true intentions, akin to a street operator's deception at 2020. Greenwashing, where companies exaggerate their environmental efforts, exemplifies how CSR can be employed to create a false image of responsibility. FIRES 2017. Details on the counter-argument over CSR practices. However, some critics argue that organizations investing in social causes like running girl child education programs and orphanages are good, but CSR in itself is overrated. For example, a company like Mercedes-Benz partnered with an NGO in India to grow trees in villages, while a single company will cut down a higher number of those trees to set up in units. In this case, Mercedes-Benz planted about 50,000 trees through the NGO. Some also argue that the cost of business operation will be high when carry out CSR strategic initiatives that will effectively affect a product's prices and quality. If this were the case, many organizations that are carrying out CSR initiatives would have gone bankrupt or liquidated, but they are striving. An example is the IKEA Foundation, which donated 2.3 million US dollars to electricity in Africa and India. There are other foundations that I know about, like the Dangote Foundation, the Bill Gates Foundation, etc., etc. Details of the arguments over CSR practices continued. The critics argue that these companies sweep all their wrongdoings under the CSR rug. The Nestle company, for instance, faces constant biodiversity risk to the planet. However, the fact that some companies go rogue does not mean that CSR practices should be encouraged. Companies like Dell, Coca-Cola, etc. are using CSR strategies to benefit the society and the environment. Coca-Cola, Dare, and IKEA have switched to using alternative fuel in their company. Some critics also argue that companies are using CSR practices for publicity and profits, and not the other way around. For instance, automobile companies are giving out green vehicles due to the global cry for the environment. While this may sound true in the economic sense, the positive impacts of this campaign on the people who benefit from these CSR strategies or initiatives cannot be denied. For instance, between 2013 and 2020, between 2013 and 2014, about 68% of the 1,027 million pounds charity received from Eloy, Tesco, and Shell. There are always two sides to any coin. Therefore, CSR cannot be an exception. CSR practices are actually becoming a compelling strategy to eliminate the environmental impacts that organizations' activities have caused, and also a way for businesses to be socially responsible to employees and communities. There is also the argument that social causes or needs are too diverse to be addressed by the scarcity of business resources. For instance, time invested in solving community needs is consumed rather than production processes. While this seems true, companies can form partnerships with NGOs to engage in community activities for improvement. Policy and legislative framework for guiding CSR activities are not very clear. I beg to differ in these. In India, companies are expected to spend 22% of their profits on CSR initiatives. Some of the CSR drawbacks. CSR initiatives could become more complicated during the recession period, making them less visible. Customers might also see it as a form of marketing means and become cynical. CSR costs might be recouped in terms of price and product quality. Smaller organizations might see it less visible to engage in CSR activities. Experts in CSR can be scarce and expensive for SMEs to maintain. Shareholders definitely have expectations and can perceive CSR initiatives negatively, which could create another challenge to navigate. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I wish to see you next time. Bye.